play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Welcome to Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, live from Little Rock. It is a journey into the things we love, whether you're listening on 96.5 FM The Answer over the air or online, or any of many other methods such as iHeartRadio or TuneIn Radio apps, or you're listening delayed via the podcast or Krypton Radio. Welcome. So glad to have you. Got a great show today. Going to have Doug Davison and Dave Middleton talking virtual tabletops for role-playing games and Fantasy Grounds 2, which is the official virtual tabletop of Dungeons & Dragons. So that'll be really cool. Of course, we'll have geek news before then and all the other geeky goodness you've come to love, expect, nay, demand from Shane Plays Radio. So always remember that even as we talk, for each show, there's always at shaneplays.com, there's show notes up on the blog for today's show, for the news items and for the guests and et cetera. So if you're like, you want to know more, or you're like, what did he say, or any of that stuff, go to shaneplays.com on your phone, tablet, or desktop computer and check that out. Handy show notes for you right there. Don't forget that we always go out as a podcast within a codcast. Codcast? Is that like what, if you talk about fish, you have a cod? I don't know. Zach shaking his head, my intrepid producer. We always go out as a podcast, and that'll go up on the blog at shaneplays.com, on iTunes, Stitcher, on the YouTube channel. Don't forget we have a YouTube channel at youtube.com/GoShanePlays. Anyway, within a couple of days of the show, that'll go out. And then we're carried on our incredible partner, Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi, kryptonradio.com. So I guess, Zach, let's do the do. Let's turn on the secret microphone and eavesdrop on our news team. What's going on with those guys? Oh, there they go. Always working hard. Love those guys. All right, with first news item, and this is the news item for me, not the news team. Last week, I mentioned that I had a Patreon supporter, or Patreon, however you want to say it, who bumped their support from $2 to $5. I said, I'll go find out who that is and give them a shout out. And then in the breaks, I didn't get a chance to do that. So I want to do that this week. I hope I'm saying this right. If not, please, people, bear in mind that the goal here is to give respect to the man, not to make fun of his name. It's Garon Gillum. I believe I said that right. Thank you for the Patreon support and bumping your Patreon support. And remember, folks, every dollar we get via Patreon is another penny per hour our news team gets. So that's a big deal. You can go to patreon.com/ShanePlays if you'd like to support the show. And I mentioned it some, I try not to belabor the point. We have sponsors on the show, but I'm also hoping for Patreon supporters, which I do have some, and I appreciate them very much. I'm really looking to hopefully make this since it's a live radio show out of a radio studio, and it goes out later as a podcast. This isn't just a podcast. So it's a different kind of thing. And podcasts, for the most part, have a very low overhead, a very low expense. This is a radio show that also goes out as a podcast. So I do have expenses to cover. So it's kind of an experiment. And if you as the community would like to help support it, please consider doing so via Patreon at patreon.com/ShanePlays. All right. So let's get into the main news. Of course, we've had a couple of deaths this week that are very high profile. One is David Bowie, who, is for multiple decades just an amazing personality that had his hand in film and of course rock music. I mean, he basically reinvented his own brand of rock music, was very just an iconoclast, very creative, unique person who touched a lot of people. So, we want to acknowledge that he died at cancer of age 69. Now, most people, of course, are talking about his music. And from a geeky standpoint, they're talking about the fact that he was in the movie Legend from the 80s, or Labyrinth, not Legend, Labyrinth. And he played this, very fantastical character from Labyrinth. What I want to give a geeky shout out to David Bowie was he actually had a video game role in a game called Omicron Nomad Soul. And there's a link up on shaneplays.com where they took all the footage of his time in that game. It's about 5 minutes worth of footage, and put it on YouTube. And he plays this sort of somebody whose essence has been put inside a computer, and he kind of plays a leader of a resistance, and it kind of this virtual personality. But it's pretty interesting. You should check it out. Of course, Alan Rickman, who played Severus Snape in the Harry Potter movies, also died from cancer at age 69. He's, a lot of people know him from Severus Snape in the Harry Potter movies. I, of course, mainly remember him as Hans Gruber as the villain, and Zach's giving me the big thumbs up in Die Hard. I can't, there's been a lot of movies since Die Hard came out that kind of emulate the stuff. When Die Hard came out, there was no movie that had ever come out like that before. The style of it, the way the acting was, Hans Gruber, just everything about that movie was fresh and exciting and cool, and it blew me away. So many great lines, and so that's how I'll always remember Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber. But I know he's close to a lot of people's heart as Severus Snape, and I love Severus Snape as a character. You think he's a villain, but really he's a complex good guy. And I always was kind of rooting as I was reading the books that he turned out to be a good guy, and I heard he did. I didn't finish the books, but I heard that he turned out to be a bit of a good guy. And Zach, are you a Harry Potter guy? Wasn't it Harry's parents had kind of picked on and bullied Severus Snape or something?
Don't ask me.
Don't know. Okay, you don't know. All right, that's kind of what I heard. All right, moving forward, and I don't want to spend too much time on the news. I'm trying to do better at getting through the news and give more time to my guests. But The Force Awakens, Poe Dameron, of course, was the X-Wing pilot and the guy that Finn helped escape from the First Order towards the beginning of the movie. He's getting his own comic book from Marvel, and it looks really good. So he's basically, like, everybody likes all the new. They like Finn, they like Rey, they like Poe, but he's kind of a breakout character because he didn't have just a whole lot of screen time, but people really like him. So and I like him. I think he's a good character. I love that at the beginning when Kylo Ren has him. He's like, okay, how's this work? You talk, do I talk? He's just great character. So, all right, and this is the 50th anniversary this year. And I think January may be the actual month, but it's 50th anniversary of the 60s TV show Batman. Got a couple of news items on that. But first, Zach's going to hit us up with a little bit of that amazing theme song. And that, of course, has gone on. Even if people have never seen an episode of the show, that theme song has just gotten into pop culture. Everybody, and the little spinning bat symbol, the going and all that. Great show. I remember it well growing up. I still love to watch it when I catch it here and there. And of course, it's out on DVD and Blu-ray and all that now. But it is the 50th anniversary, and there's a link I have up on ShanePlays.com. Remember, you can go to ShanePlays.com for the show notes and all of this stuff. And it talks about how the 60s TV show actually changed the Dark Knight as a character. And there was some stuff in there I didn't know. One, and I think I'd heard this before, but this article talks about it. It's from sciencefiction.com, that they were getting close to canceling the Batman comic book or books. I think they probably had Batman and Detective Comics at the time, until the show came along, and there was this thing called Batmania, Zach. People went nuts for Batman. It was one of those pop culture merchandising. Everybody went crazy for Batman. And so that kind of not only made it a popular TV show for a brief time, I think it only ran for 3 seasons, and it had a feature film too, which my favorite line from the feature film is, "Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb." Have you ever seen the Batman movie, Zach?
I have not.
Okay, man, I could tell that I need to instruct you in the ways of the geeky arts. But anyway, very popular. But there was two things in this article that surprised me. One was that, Batman was it, because at the time Superman was it, and that he was the big one. And then the TV show put Batman on the map in the 60s, big time, in pop culture, not just among like comic book fans. And then also, according to this article, I want to double check this, Batgirl was introduced in the TV show, and because of that, they introduced her in the comic books. I didn't know that. I always thought it was the other way around. So if people out there have, I want to see if that's true. That I guess it is true, but for some reason I'm just like, really? But if people know different, call 501-823-0965. You can always call into the show. That's one of the advantages of a radio show, live radio show, not just a podcast. 501-823-0965. Or you can tweet me at Shane Plays. That's ShanePlays. Tweet me at Shane Plays. So anyway, moving on. Another piece of Batman news is Batman 66, which is what they refer to now as the 60s Batman TV show. Batman 66 is getting a feature animated film, according to Cinema Blend. And now, before you get too excited, and there's nothing wrong with animation, but it makes it sound like a motion picture. It's animated, but it's going to be a feature film length movie animated with Adam West and Burt Ward reprising their voice roles as Batman and Robin, respectively. And hopefully they'll do it respectfully too. But anyway, so that's pretty neat. I'm looking forward to that. Video game junkies, especially first-person shooters and fans of Doom, will be glad to know that John Romero, the man himself who was, part of id and like a major force behind Doom, which, and basically, just blew everything away when it came out. And there were first-person shooters before Doom, but it really made it its dominant genre of games. He has released a new Doom level after 21 years. So you just go search for, new John Romero Doom level, or there's a article from Pixel Dynamo on the Shane Play show notes about that, and you can find it as well. But evidently, he threw it up on a Dropbox link, and you can just download it and play it. And it requires like a certain version of Doom Classic or something like that. This is cool. I bet you Zach will like this, and many other people listening. Amazon Prime members now get 20% off game pre-orders and new releases. So if it's a new release, now I don't think this is digital. I think it's talking about hard copy. I think it's talking about hard copy games, actual physical boxes and that sort of thing. Then you get 20% off pre-orders and new releases at Amazon Prime. So and I think evidently they're trying to match it. It's like from Best Buy or something like that has a similar program. But so if you don't already have Amazon Prime, which is a great service anyway, not only for the free 2-day shipping on most orders from Amazon, but also all of their music and video and all that stuff. There's another reason. So, X-Files fans, you can see the first minute of the upcoming X-Files premiere on the Fox website, the X-Files website. That's according to a story from Polygon. I watched it. It's interesting. It doesn't show anything massively new, but it's still it's kind of a nice primer going over what has happened before and what's coming. And this one excites me a lot because I was a big fan of the first movie. But Pacific Rim 2 is still going, according to director Guillermo del Toro, which I guess there was some news recently saying that it wasn't happening, but he's like, nope, it's still going. And evidently, maybe one of the main reasons is the studio that has the rights, I think, got bought out by a Chinese company. And the Chinese company is Pacific Rim 1 did very well in China. So that I'm excited about that because I really like the first Pacific Rim and I like Gypsy Danger and all that stuff. So got some role-playing news, but I'm going to hang on to that until we bring on our guests after the interview because we're going to be talking specifically role-playing games. So I'm going to hang on to that news. Hang on after the break. We got some role-playing and Dungeons & Dragons related news items, and then we'll also have our guests talking Fantasy Grounds 2, which is the virtual tabletop for playing role-playing games online. So we'll hit that after the break. Take us to a break, Zach.
MegaWars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit megawars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now. megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie. and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. Glad you're joining me on this, either live on a Saturday afternoon or possibly via the podcast or Krypton Radio after the fact. So glad to have you. Got right now on the phones, we have Doug Davison, who is the, Doug, are you the president of Smiteworks? How does that work, buddy?
Yeah, that's my official title.
Okay.
President.
Yeah, but I have a feeling you wear a few hats, but your official title is, all right.
Janitor, I think, is in the mix, so.
Yeah, janitor, lead programmer, the entire programming team. No, I'm just joking. I know you have more people you work with.
It's close, yeah.
Yeah, well, now, for people listening, Doug is the president of Smiteworks USA, LLC, which owns, operates, improves, and constantly brings us Fantasy Grounds 2, which is the official, if I understand correctly, virtual tabletop of Dungeons & Dragons. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is fantastic. All right, we were also going to be joined by Dave Middleton of Tabletopping, who is a huge virtual tabletop fan and a Fantasy Grounds 2 fan, and basically an evangelist. He loves Fantasy Grounds, but he's had some family emergencies come up. He thought he was going to be able to make it, and then when we reached out to him, he's running an errand related to that, so he's not going to be able to join us now. Which is fine. I'd love to have Dave, but I've never gotten a chance to talk with Doug, so I'm looking forward to that too. I am going to say I don't know if Dave is listening by any chance, but Dave, you're welcome to call in at any time. So even if you can only make the last few minutes, you're welcome to, and I'll try to text that to him as well. But anyway, Doug, thanks so much. Welcome to the show. Really,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, really super glad to have you. Now, I've had Dave on before talking about his Twitch channel and also virtual tabletops. We didn't get to go as deep into virtual tabletops as I wanted. So I was like, hey, man, we need to come back on. And hey, I know you see if you can get the Fantasy Grounds on and everything. So he kind of helped put this all together. Before we dig into what you do and before we dig into virtual tabletops and stuff, I had some role-playing game related news that I didn't get to before the break that, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of take a couple of minutes and hit these news items, and then feel free to banter or add your opinion to this. So you're free. Sure. You're free to co-host this with me, Doug. So first of all, did you see this study that now Geek and Sundry has an article on it, but they're referencing an actual, I guess, psychological study that says role-playing gamers have more empathy than non-gamers. Did you see this?
I just saw that, yeah. Geek and Sundry they've got all kinds of cool stuff. So, yeah, I kind of follow them from time to time, too.
Yeah, well, so what they're saying is, they're not necessarily saying that by more empathy, because I guess in the psychological community, there's some debate on what empathy really is, but they're not saying that by empathy, they're necessarily nicer people, but they're saying that the experience of role-playing seems to indicate that you have a better ability to put yourself into somebody else's shoes and kind of relate to maybe what they're experiencing or going through. But which makes sense to me, because I've said to people before, like, one of the things about, in fact, I was talking with Chris Perkins on a previous show, months ago, and I felt that D&D and all the role playing kind of gave me the ability to see things from other people's points of view. But, there's always people will say, well, causality isn't necessarily correlation. So the question is, are naturally empathic people drawn to role playing, or does role playing help somebody be more empathetic? So
I think it's practice. It's like you're basically practicing a certain type of behavior, just like you're practicing problem solving, you're practicing social interactions with others, you're practicing sometimes leadership and teamwork. I mean, all of those things are positive outcomes of routine playing of role-playing games, and it doesn't surprise me that empathy would be one of those things as well.
Right.
I mean, that's my take.
Okay, well, it's a fair enough take. I know as a player, you constantly, if you're really role-playing, now there's role-playing, which is ROLE, and then there's role-playing, which is ROLL. So you're either, some people just roll the dice and when they want to see the math work. Other people role-play where they put themselves into the role of the character. If you're doing that, you're continually asking yourself, what would my character do in this situation? And if you're a dungeon master or a game master, you're doing it for multiple characters. So yeah, I would say that some of it probably would be environment, not just what is the old thing, environment versus your nature versus your environment or whatever. So it's probably a little bit of a blend of both, and maybe naturally empathetic people tend to hang with role playing longer. I don't know. Anyway, so here's the next news item. And I saw that you have a press release or a news article out on this. I haven't had a chance to read it, but it's one of my many references I'm trying to go through while I make digest what's happening and maybe make a broader post and video about it. But Dungeons and Dragons has announced that 5th edition is going OGL, Open Gaming License. And they've also done the DMs Guild to let people self-publish content for D&D that has their own IP, like Forgotten Realms. So, A, does this surprise you? And B, how will it affect Fantasy Grounds?
So, no, it doesn't surprise me because, we've had, the relationship with Wizards of the Coast officially for a while. So they give us a heads up about, things that are coming down the pipeline. And then publicly, they had announced that they were going to have an OGL license, an open gaming license, basically for people to be able to refer back to without even having, bought the books necessarily or to use to build their own content. They announced that pretty early on when they first, were talking about 5th edition, even before we got a license to work with them. So we kind of expected it was going to be coming down, and for a while, we didn't know to what extent that was going to be because,
right.
They released the D&D basic rules pretty early on too, and that was a very small subset of the overall rules. It gave you, had 4 classes and 4 races that you could play, and very, very limited set of spells. It was nice, but it was like, much short of what you would really need to play the game. Whereas now, it's a 400-page document of rules that they basically gifted to the community to be able to play. And so it covers every single class is presented, every single race is presented. Now there's some limits, and it doesn't have like the sub races for the different races. It doesn't have all of the same descriptive text and fluff, and it doesn't have any of the images and that sort of thing.
For the OGL,
and then some other things have been modified, with the OGL.
Right.
But then it has all the classes, but without all the archetypes. So there might be like one archetype, that you can. When you pick, it'll automatically pick it for you. So you can't, normally when you build a character at 3rd level or so, you can branch out and then you can diversify your character from other people who are running a fight or a monk or whatever. And so now you have just a single pathway for each one of those. But I mean, it's a great addition to the community and for gamers kind of,
I agree,
worldwide.
Yeah. And I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'll probably do a whole nother show on it. I'm going to do, an article kind of summarizing everything and probably a video on the YouTube channel. But it's interesting. 2 things actually happen, and I think a lot of people aren't quite seeing this yet. I know you get it from where you're setting, and I've gotten it now that I've studied it some more. 2 things actually happen. One is you get the OGL, where you can basically you can publish content using the engine, the core engine of 5th edition, but maybe not necessarily all the intellectual property, and not every subclass and feat and all that stuff is in there. But then you have the Dungeon Masters Guild, where you can self-publish content in a revenue sharing method with Wizards of the Coast and Drive-Thru RPG, or the overall company that is it One Book? I can't remember the exact name of the company.
One Bookshelf.
One Bookshelf. Mm-hmm. And you can use the IP, I think if it's in the core rule books or the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide or Out of the Abyss, you can use that IP. intellectual property that and make money. That's pretty cool. So, but anyway, like I said, I don't want to belabor this. I definitely want to give time to talk about Fantasy Grounds and virtual tabletops, which brings me to my last news item. I was going to make this a news item last week, and I was like, well, you know what? I've got these guys coming on next week, so I'll save it for this week. Now, Dave Middleton, who was going to join us today, I sent him a text. He's welcome to join. I just sent him a text that you can join us later if you only have a few minutes. We'll see how his day goes. He actually, now let's be clear. Let me be clear. Dave is a fan. He loves Fantasy Grounds, right? He loves Fantasy Grounds, but the two big virtual tabletops out right there are Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds. And Dave did a very fair, very even-handed comparison video of both tabletops on YouTube. And there's a link to that if people go to shaneplays.com, and they can see what the differences are between the two. And I thought I was actually pretty impressed with Dave, because I know from Dave's Twitch channel and knowing Dave somewhat personally, I know where his heart is. But he did a very fair video, and I was pretty impressed with this video. So if people are curious about virtual tabletops and the difference between, you know, two of the main products out there, that video is out there, and it's linked on shaneplays.com in the show notes. Okay, having said all that, Doug, welcome again to the show. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Fantasy Grounds?
Sure. So I've just been a lifelong gamer. I started when I was a young kid, and I came across, a set of Dungeons and Dragons, the Red Box edition that was someone's mother was making them sell at a yard sale or whatever. So
what a mean mother!
Cheap. I know. So I scored it for pretty cheap, and then came home and read through it, and was instantly just like, oh, this is what I want to do. Sounds exactly like what I wanted to play. So I would include and rope all my friends into it, and I ended up essentially becoming a dungeon master at a very, very early age, and then
right.
kind of it's carried with me throughout most of my life. Brief period in college when I stopped playing because I was more interested in other things that are available in college. But then
and we'll leave it at that.
We'll just leave it at that. And then I resumed it again afterwards, and it's just been a lifelong kind of passion for me. And so the Fantasy Ground thing came along. I was my career path has been through mostly software development and business consulting and that sort of thing. And so I had my own company that was doing that, and I was moving from one state to another state, and I had a local group that I really wanted to continue playing with. And at that point in time, I was really interested in playing. Wizards of the Coast had the Star Wars Saga Edition game system, and so I wanted to play that. So I looked around at all the different virtual tabletops.
Now, what was, just to interject, what?
Yeah.
Now, West End Games used to have the D6 Star Wars.
Yeah.
What was Saga? Because I remember, 15 years ago or whatever, they had a D20 version of Star Wars. Was that the Saga, or was that even something different? Okay.
Yeah, it was. Well, they came out with there were two different D20 based sets for Star Wars. So the first one was just Star Wars Revised Edition, I believe was the title of it, and then they came out with the Star Wars Saga Edition. And so I bought all of them, and then Saga was more supported for a while, and that one kind of I liked that one quite a bit. So that's what I was looking to play at that point. This is, I think, around 2008, I believe.
Okay.
And so, I was already using I've been using software to help run my own games of like D&D and stuff for a while, and would build my own little small software utilities and that sort of stuff to manage things and to, do cool little things to help me run my game better. And so I found Fantasy Grounds as an end user, and I ended up buying that and instantly kind of fell in love with that. And I found that I could modify it and I could build my own rule set and completely skin it and change how it worked to support Star Wars Saga Edition. And so I was impressed with it from an end user perspective, but I wasn't the original creator. It's been around since like 2004. So at that point in time, it was had a pretty good community, had a real active community of other developers and graphic artists that would kind of work together and build stuff together on their forums.
And on this, are we talking about the first edition or first version of Fantasy Ground? Is that what we're
technically still Fantasy Grounds 2?
Okay.
Yeah. So it was right after that. I think they had moved to Fantasy Grounds 2. But I really liked it from a from an architecture standpoint as a software developer, because I said, well, these guys made really good design choices when they built it, because they built it to be extended and modified, and it just was a really powerful kind of a platform. And it also let you roll cool dice in a nice 3D, kind of format, and it felt like you were really rolling the dice. So really, to me, it captured the feel of the tabletop experience. And so at some point after using it for a while, I just contacted the owners who were out of Finland and, tried to see if they were interested in selling the company. And because I thought they could do even more with it than what they were doing. And so, after some negotiation back and forth, eventually they did agree to sell it, and then we just had to come up with terms and that sort of thing. So I managed to buy it, and I actually went in with another community developer who was real active on developing his own version of the Dungeons and Dragons rule sets for use in Fantasy Grounds, and he had also started work. That's when 4th edition D&D was just coming out as well. And he had built out a 4th edition rule set, much like I had done with the Star Wars Saga edition. So he and I would often, be posting in the same forum threads and that sort of stuff. I'd never met him before. He was out in Seattle, Washington. His name is John Gregory. He's now the other co-owner. But basically, just having never met this person in a face-to-face, we ended up, I ended up inviting him to go in with me to buy the company. At first, ended up not working out, but then shortly after I bought it, I reached back out to him again, and he bought into the company, and we've been business partners ever since. And that was from 2009. And from here, we've grown it out. We've added a lot more, content. We've gotten licenses and so forth with a lot of different companies. I know, like you mentioned, Troll Lord Games was one of the ones that I just heard an advertisement for Castles and Crusades.
Yes.
And so, they're one of our publishers that we've been able to partner with. So there's a Castles and Crusades rule set.
Yeah, he told me. Now, Stephen Chenault, actually, I'm in Little Rock, and that's where Troll Lord Games is out of. And, I had Stephen Chenault on the show. I'm going to have him on again because he enjoyed coming on. He was a really good guest. But yeah, he mentioned, I was talking to him. He said, yeah, we're on Fantasy Grounds. And he was kind of telling me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of, like a lot of the adventures are completely ready to run for Castles and Crusades.
That's excellent.
So yeah, that's one of the things that I really liked about Fantasy Grounds is that we could build a system that highlights the best components and features of each system individually. So if you play Call of Cthulhu, it'll look and act a little bit differently than Castles and Crusades will, or than Dungeons and Dragons will. And so we can really kind of like fine tune it, and then we can put the entire content of the books in there so that it's searchable, and you've got all of the NPC stats at your fingertips, that sort of thing. And we can automate various parts of the math to make the game just run smoother, do the image sharing, all that sort of stuff. But we're able to do it in an official capacity with a partnership with various publishers. And so we've got, I want to say we've got almost 30 or so different publishers that we work with, and lots of different games that are out there. And then beyond that, there's a bunch of community rule sets where people, much like I had done earlier, will build a basic structure for something, and then you can play other games. So like there's, the One Ring, I think, was one of them that I saw on there. I know people have played World of Darkness, has a couple different versions and stuff. But the only difference there is that because we don't have that partnership with the publisher, it won't come with any of the data. It's basically like an empty playground that you can fill in. You can add your own monsters and stuff, but it knows what a monster looks like in that system, or it knows what a character should look like in the system as far as, these are the stats, these are the skills, that sort of stuff.
All right, well,
beyond that,
go ahead.
You got to plug it in.
Okay, well, we're coming up on a break, but before we hit a break, real quick, because there's a lot of people out there that play role-playing games that still have no clue what a virtual tabletop is. So, believe it or not, if you met somebody for the first time that is passionate, loves to play role-playing games, and you wanted to tell them about Fantasy Grounds, how would you describe it to them? Like the elevator pitch, if you will. Sum it up.
Sure.
Like, what is it?
Sure. It's basically a digital tool and aid to help you run the game on your computer. And so it could either be at your in-person game, just to help you manage your campaign and track your combat instead of flipping index cards to figure out whose turn comes up next and having to flip back and forth between pages in the books. You'll have it all handy and available. Or it also enables you to run it completely online, where you're connecting from your home and all your other players are connecting from their home all across the world and playing in the same game.
And it has the character sheets, has the monster stats, has the maps, has video and audio conferencing. So about the only thing that you can't do online is share a bowl of chips.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So if you know what it means to sit around a table and play Dungeons and Dragons or any of the other role-playing games that are out there and have a lot of fun, you could do it with people in different locations now. And in a lot of the experience is still there. In fact, it brings...
Well, in some ways you lose a little bit because, you don't... It's always nice to get around in person with your friends, but there's other things that you get that you can only do really in this kind of an interface.
Right.
As an example, I don't know if you've ever done the whispered notes to people, and I know people in-person games have done stuff where they write a little note on a piece of paper and they throw it across the table.
Yeah, or they drag the DM to the side, and then everybody knows something's up.
Everybody knows something's up. So that sort of stuff can now happen, without that being as obvious because there's, it's a simple whisper kind of a mechanism. You can send whispers back and forth. And then you also have the case of, when you want to show a handout to someone when the party does split, don't ever split the party. But when they do split and, a couple people walk into a room and they, stumble into a beholder or something like that, then everybody else just sees in chat how they're screaming out loud,
right.
something like that. And only that person has seen that handout, and it's just a little bit easier than kind of sharing it around the table. And then we just added a new feature which allows people to actually chat in various fantasy languages.
Oh,
so,
okay.
The languages, as a DM, you could have like a group of kobolds, for instance, speaking Draconic.
And only characters that can speak. Yeah, that's a neat feature. Okay, on that note, let's hold that. I've got to take us to a break. We come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the unique capabilities of what you could do with a virtual tabletop, and any other questions that come to mind, folks. If you have a question for Doug or for me, or just want to talk about virtual tabletops or whatever, feel free to call 501-823-0965. You can also tweet me at Shane Plays. I'm gonna talk about my favorite local game store, Game Goblins. After that, we'll hit a break. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Tell them Shane Plays sent you.
MegaWars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit megawars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now. megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. You can always call in at 501-823-0965 or tweet me at Shane Plays if you would like to ask a question or make a comment on the topic. And the topic at hand is virtual tabletops and Fantasy Grounds 2 with Smiteworks USA president Doug Davison, who happens to own Fantasy Grounds 2. So, Doug, before the break, we were talking about some of the unique features of a virtual tabletop. So, maybe tell us a little bit more about, what if I'm playing my favorite role-playing game, or even not my favorite, just hanging out with my buddies, using a virtual tabletop, using Fantasy Grounds 2, what are some other unique things that it brings to the table? No pun intended.
Sure. So one of the things that we really are quite proud of is how well the pre-done adventures are. So, normally if you're going to run a game at the table, you would buy the adventure module book, and then you would be flipping through that. You'd read through it once, and then when your players are there, you'd just kind of play through it. It has some box text. You'd read that out or paraphrase it as you got to that part, and then it would say, okay, well, here's a combat encounter. You'd have to, go either draw out a map, or sometimes you can show them the map, but normally those only have like the DM version, and it has all the secret doors and it has numbers in all the rooms and that sort of thing, and tell you what is in each area. And then so the DM then draws it out on a rollout mat and gets miniatures and figures, and hopefully you have all the miniatures you need. And you say, oh, I need 3 zombies, but I've only got one of those, so I'm going to have to use a proxy figure for that for that
right.
one or whatever. So you do that whole thing, and so there's the whole setup process. And then as they explore rooms, then you keep, drawing new sections, and you keep moving through that area. That's one way that people play. It's not the only way, obviously. But so that sort of thing, if you were to buy the adventure module that we have, what we've been able to do is oftentimes we can generate the map in 2 different formats. So we'll have one that has the DM stuff that only they need to see, and then another one where we've gone and we've hidden the secret doors and we've taken the numbers off, that sort of thing. And then each of those is then linked to what happens in that room. So it becomes real easy. You just share the player version of the map. The players will put their tokens on there showing where the people are on the map, and then as they move around, the DM can uncover and reveal the next room by just cutting away part of a mask and say, okay, here you can see that. And then when you have a combat encounter, you can pull up the combat encounter, and with one click, you can hit a button, and then it'll automatically place all of the enemy tokens where they start out for that particular combat. It'll roll their initiative, put them in initiative order, and then you can let your players roll their own initiative, and it'll automatically sort them in there for you. Or you can just say roll it for everybody if you want a very fast play. So the setup process becomes super, super simple, and then the part that the actual combat itself has a lot of automation built in as well. So when the wizard player decides that they want to drop a fireball, they could very easily draw out basically a circle to say, okay, I need a 30-foot circle, 25-foot circle, whatever the radius is.
Right.
They can drag that out. It shows everything that will be covered, so there's no ambiguity about, okay, well, is it going to be in there or not? You don't have to go find a new template or try to measure it out on the map. It'll do all that kind of math thing for you, and everyone on the table can see it. Everyone connected to the game can see, okay, yep, those 6 people are going to be hit. So then you select all of those, you open up your character sheet where it has fireball, and you launch the attack, and what it does is it'll roll against all 6 of the enemies. It'll automatically determine who succeeds and who fails on their saving throw, and then it remembers that so that when you roll damage, you roll the damage at the one time, and it'll automatically apply the full damage to the people that need full damage and half damage to the people that need half damage, and then, but this one of these creatures was a salamander and it has fire resistance, so it'll automatically deduct that part, and so all of that.
So it does a lot of it's almost like a little assistant that does all the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like having a rules expert there that is super, super fast at your side helping you DM and run your game.
That is true. So it's like when you say something happens, before you even have a chance to look over at the little assistant and say, hey, figure this out, he and or she has already whipped out the calculator. Done all. So here's what's happened. So that's pretty neat. Yeah. I love the math of role-playing games. I've always loved the math of role-playing games, but it can at times bog down the flow. So that's really neat. Now I've got a question here via Twitter from Subliminal10, that's subliminal numeral 10. And he's asking, have the virtual tabletops made it to the smartphone platforms yet?
Fantasy Grounds has not. I'm not aware of any that are on that. Part of the problem is just a matter of real estate. There's a certain amount of room that you kind of need to be able to very easily see a map. And if you can imagine a map shrunk down on your phone, and then you've got 5-foot squares represented on that map, you'd be doing a lot of zooming and panning and that on a very small device. So we've been working on a newer version about the last year and a half that will eventually allow us to get out onto tablet devices as well. So you'll have some mobile platform stuff there. But we're gonna design that portion a little bit differently. It's gonna probably be a mobile that will interact and maybe have some character sheets that are interactive, but not fully on your phone yet. So right now it still requires a laptop of some sort.
Okay, so I'm just going to think out loud here. I'm not saying that Fantasy Grounds should do this. I'm not saying the Fantasy Grounds would lack if it didn't have it, but it just kind of got my imagination going, and I could see a little companion smartphone or tablet app that has your character sheet on it. And as things progress in the game, then the spells you have left and the hit points you have, and maybe if you have inspiration or not, kind of automatically reflect. So as the game is going, it's also talking with your phone, and maybe it could also roll your dice for you. That was just kind of a neat little thought. So instead of the full-on experience, it's like a companion app that will let you, hey, I'm going to do it. Yeah, but
and that's probably what we're going to look at doing. It's not going to be the full-on version of Fantasy Grounds that we can run on a tablet or laptop, but I mean, those things are coming so far and so fast as well as far as their capabilities that I think by the time we get to that stage, we should be able to build something kind of like what you're suggesting there. Yeah.
Well, wait till we have holographic displays off our smartphones. That'll be sweet. All right. So we've actually, as I love to say, time is a predator that stalks us all our lives. We've actually only got about 2 or 3 minutes left. I want to make sure to let people know how they can get Fantasy Grounds and the various methods, the various types of involvement and ownership they can have with it.
Sure. So the best thing is just to go to fantasygrounds.com. That's our main website. We're also available on Steam if you search for us on Steam as Fantasy Grounds.
And I think that's super cool that it's on Steam. So
yeah, and that's probably the easiest way if you're running on a Mac. We've got a pretty simple one-click install for Mac users on Steam, and then all of the DLC, or the add-ons that you were to pick up if you want to get the player's handbook material or monster manual or whatever. Then that sort of stuff, you can get from either location. And
so that's an important point. You can add to it as you need. You don't have to pay for role-playing systems you don't want to play.
Exactly. It comes out of the box with support for Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 and Pathfinder, and those both have SRD content. D&D 4th edition, it's got a rule set but no data because there's no open gaming license for that system, as you're aware. And then D&D 5th edition, since they just announced the OGL, we've already released a full SRD. So it's
almost as if you knew beforehand, like you said earlier. Yeah. It's
almost as if we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it comes preloaded with all that sort of stuff. And so, you could very easily try it out. We've got free 30-day trials. So we've got a subscription service, or we've got a one-time purchase. If you don't like subscriptions, you could just buy it outright and then not have to pay ever again. So I think that's something kind of unique with our system is that we offer both. So, some people want it's just $4 a month or it's $10 a month and that covers my entire group. So those two options are there.
Well, and that's I hate to interrupt you, but that's an important point. If you have a license, you're a DM, your group members can play with you. They don't have to own it as well.
So there's two different types of license. So there's a standard license, which is the $4 a month or the one-time, like $39. And with that license, all your players would need to bring their own license. And then we have an ultimate license that the DM can get, which is a $10 a month or a one-time purchase, and that allows you to let your players connect for free. They just use the demo version of the game, and then they can play without having to buy anything ever. So that's probably that's our most popular option. A lot of DMs just go for that one because it's it's the simplest. They don't have to worry about it. If they want to invite anyone to their game, they don't have to say, oh, you'll need to go buy this and use it. They'll just say, no, go download this and install it, and then you can join my game.
All right. So, and that's is that just fantasygrounds.com?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to have to wrap here, Doug. I wish we had more time. You and Dave are always welcome to come on in the future, especially if you want to talk about maybe new announcements for Fantasy Grounds or that sort of thing. As I said before, when I was emailing with you, once I drop off, I can't come back on and say thanks. So thanks for being on the show. Folks, you can go to shaneplays.com and there's show notes for Fantasy Grounds and Smiteworks and all that. So you can go learn more. Doug, thanks so much for being on. I think what you're doing is extremely cool. I had other questions. I would love to learn about your technology, what languages you're working in, but that'll have to save for another time. Have a great day. Keep doing the cool stuff with Fantasy Grounds. And thanks so much for being on the show.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah. Take care. And all right. So guys, go wrap up. Thanks so much for, letting me be part of your life for this hour, whether you're doing it live or via the podcast or on Krypton Radio. Don't forget we are on Krypton Radio, delayed a week. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi, kryptonradio.com. The tweet of the week is from Warren Simmons, who is the Valiant Comics editor-in-chief. He says, effort is a skill. I like that, Zach. Effort is a skill. That's from @Warren Simmons. That's the tweet of the week. Or Warren Simons, I guess, is how you say it. Next week, we're going to have Jeff D. and Jack Herman back. They're going to be talking more about villains and vigilantes and the future of one of the original superhero role-playing game systems. And don't forget our Patreon, if you'd like to support the show, is at patreon.com/ShanePlays. And we will go out as a podcast for the next couple of weeks, next couple of days. You can find on our blog at ShanePlays.com, along with our show notes. And, on Stitcher, iTunes, and all that stuff. Folks, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week with more of a journey into the things we love. Geek Talk Radio, Shane Plays.